Good day, podcast community. Pete Kane, Podcast Pete, and I'm here with a good friend, Dave Hillgrove. And Dave,
Here's for Atlanta.
and hey, you know what? Several people have said this. So before you introduce yourself, I'll give the viewers a little bit of insight. Several people have said you're the glue that has kept this class of 75 together. So we want to publicly say thank you for that. So, but for the ones that don't know you, tell our viewers who you are, where you live, and just what you're doing now. And then we'll get into the podcast.
I am, first of all, thank you for that, relaying that information. I take that as a huge compliment because our class is such a, my whole life has been high school education, teaching. So I have seen, I guess I could do the math, over 40 high school graduating classes. And then there's ours. And I'm proud to have been a part of any communication. To be honest, I got into technology, as did Peter Kane, early. And I had email, not super early, but I had it early. And as people came online in our class, I cached their, that's CHE, their addresses, and I just did what anybody would want to do, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I am David Hillgrove, father of, husband of one, wife, father of 3 daughters who have provided Dorothy and myself with 10 grandchildren. I married a St. Gertrude's girl, but she was also a St. Paul's girl and also a Madison girl. So we've known each other since 1966. We went out the first time in 1973, I think it was, and a second time in 1984, and we're married 1 year to that date in 1985. But we were friends for a long, long time.
Yeah.
I'm a high school teacher, but in the middle of my career, I started a soccer magazine, which led to some opportunities in writing and photography and some other things. I got back into education after my children had been through, or at least 2 middle school and high school, and I became a 10 times better teacher, having raised children. You know, when you're single and you're given homework and you're not thinking about their piano lessons or their sport teams or anything, you just don't have the compassion that you do.
Yeah.
And what's more, in closing, with my children, I went in and raised hell with some of the teachers that would give, word search. Here's 25 terms and find them in the word search, and I would go in and say, what does this have to do with the standards of learning? This is just lazy work so the teacher can say he gave out homework. And I didn't give anybody a hard time, but I stayed on them. So yeah. I'm retired. I've been retired since 2014.
Okay.
Sorry to keep drinking your Atlanta Coca-Cola. And we started having babies in 17. Our girls got married in 13, 15, and 17, fortunately in birth order, so I didn't have to assuage any feelings. And we went, a lot of our days are taken up helping our daughters who live no more than 6.2 miles away from us.
Ooh, that's good. So what's the breakdown on grandkids, girls and boys?
Had a firstborn girl. She just made her first communion on Sunday. And our next to last grandchild, number 9, is a girl. And then we have 8 boys. And I don't know nothing about raising no baby boys, Mr. Kane, because I had all girls. Well, I coached boys for half of my coaching career, which was 42 years in length. And I actually coached at your alma mater at St. Edward's as an assistant who took the lesser skilled players over and tried to teach them skills while he turned his good team into a great team. And I think he has children there. I don't know if he went there. I don't think he did. I don't
Mhm.
think he went there. Certainly not our age, believe me.
Well, you know what's kind of cool is one of the questions has to do with somebody that had influence on you during school. And so to hear the responses of teachers that had an impact on you, and you don't usually know about it until many years later. But my first question is, what's one thing about your life today that your 18-year-old self would be surprised or proud of to know?
I would say immediately, because of Facebook, and you and I used to race to have the most number of friends on Facebook when you were utilizing that for your businesses.
Yeah.
Um, because of Facebook, I have probably closer to 700 former students out of my whatever number of friends
Yeah.
on Facebook, and they've been great about communicating to me, and I have made an impact, according to them, in a couple of lives, and that is by far the quickest answer I have for you. I am in college. When I started studying adolescent psychology, I fell in love with practically everything about adolescence, I'm pretty good with them, I guess, and they don't intimidate me. How's that? Some people get scared to death around teenagers, but I love juniors the most, and I love seniors second most, and I would pay any amount of money to the Pete Kane Retirement Fund to never have to teach sophomores and freshmen or middle school again. I did 7 years in middle school, and that is most of my purgatory time as far as I'm concerned.
You know, I um, teach a course called Habitudes at our high school, but they're freshmen. And so in there, so I was talking to the teacher. They were in sixth and seventh grade when COVID hit. And
Oh,
you talk about a crucial time of
oh.
development. But here was the I don't know if it was all that because one of the courses was on relationships. So I asked, how many people do you know by their first name in class today? And I'm telling you, it was one and two people out of 30, 28.
Right, right.
And so the teacher was sharing is they never had the development skills, even though we text more than we talk in generally the younger, but they didn't have a chance to get to know each other like others did. So he's has seen a big challenge with the connecting, the relationship building, getting to know. So we just had him say, introduce the person next to you and say, "Hey, my name's Dave," and just meet people because the quality of your life is the quality of your relationships. And if you don't learn as early as possible, people, skills, people in general, life can be very challenging.
In every way possible, yeah. Uh, Briefly, and Pete, you may not know this, but I tend to babble.
Hmm.
That's
No,
supposed, that's supposed to make you
it's
smile.
James Madison days. Remember when we went to Florida to Disney World?
Yeah, in your
Marty,
car, your
Mike,
brand new car.
yeah, and we went around all the line because the line was real long to get in, and we kind of took a detour on the side.
We spent 3 days in jail, as I recall.
Well,
I'm only kidding.
we don't have
Sorry.
to bring up any of that,
No,
but
no.
we did spend some time together.
And for you people out there, when we got to the hotel, there were six of us. It was two girls. It was the future Mrs. Mike Natale and her roommate. And there was no way they were going to, in their own minds, in their own worlds, they were not going to spend the week together in a room. Beautiful relationship they have. And so they said, sorry, we don't have your room. And we were going to put six people in one room. Imagine the uncomfortable
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah.
mindset of girls with that. And they said, but we do have a 2-room suite, but you can't use the oven or the burners. It had a kitchenette, and
Yeah.
so we gave the girls the bedroom, and the 4 of us stayed on the floor.
Yeah. It's funny how we remember certain things. I don't remember that. But, somebody told me when I moved into an older folks' home, the average age was over 80.
Right.
I I would talk with the people, and even I'm talking with my mom. When you emotionally connect with things, you remember it. But if you don't, there's obviously so much that goes on. So yeah, it's like every person has their thoughts, memories of different things, years ago. So let me ask you a couple questions. We won't go 100% the script, but I have a cool thing I was telling Peter Maxwell. So we have the ability, because when I was seeing the bios, and I was going like, I couldn't write a bio if you had a gun to my head, like I was seeing, good writing skills and stuff like that. So I take them, I put them in AI, and I summed them up. Give me five points of this bio, and it would give me a pretty good thing. But here's what's cool. I think we're going to be able to pull it off. We're going to take the bio, turn it into a podcast. So it'll basically audio a person's bio that they have put in. So,
Yeah.
you can have it out there, and instead of a thread of a bunch of emails, be able to hear somebody, because people will reconnect and they'll probably establish some relationships. Because there's people I haven't seen in 50 years, because I've been gone
Right.
42. So,
Right.
there'll be those kind of things. But let me ask you this. What what's a lesson you've learned that you wish you could go back and share with your younger self?
Well, I responded to you folks out there in land. The professional journalist Peter gave us an idea of some of the questions, which was very wonderful of you. And I immediately wrote, "Hold thy tongue." That was a lesson that I would tell my 18-year-old self, because I fired from the hip and led with my chin and my heart on my sleeve all of my life. I still do, but my mouth has got me in some trouble, and trouble with a small t, but some of it was in employment issues, and some of it was, hurting people's feelings, and I didn't mean to. I just wasn't thinking. And perhaps my wife just had to leave. She does a thing at church on Tuesdays, but she just left. But she would say, "Oh, he doesn't hold his tongue any." But I'd like to think that was something that came forward since I was 18.
Yeah.
But that's that.
Yeah. I was fired 5 times, and I've quit 5 times. So different things. But when I would come home, and let's say Walt would drop me off because he lives now behind my mom, she would always say, "Did he talk your ear off?" Now I tell her, I say, "Mom, I make a living talking now." So it took me 64 years to find it. But hey, look,
Now you
never
got it.
late than never. Okay. So what path did you take after high school, and was it the one you expected to take?
I I'm going to hurt your feelings, you and Fred and others. I applied to Virginia Tech, and I did not even know what now I forgot the phrase for it, safety school. I didn't have one. I didn't even know you needed one. Honest to God, I'd never been to Tech. I'd never been to UVA. I didn't know anything about colleges, and that's not the fault of Benedictine. It just, I woke up one day and said, "Hey, I might want to go to college." My brother's gone to Tech, and everybody, my next door neighbor, who semi-famous person, had gone to Tech, and so I applied there, and then I was sitting with Mike Natale during a Christmas basketball tournament, the
Mhm.
BCCC, and I had been in an automobile accident with Larry Lane, who just left my house. Um,
Really?
yeah, 15 minutes ago. Maybe not even that. He delivered I should reach over and get the gift he gave me for our grandchildren. But Mike, I was in a shoulder sling and a neck brace, and we and Mike said, well, here's a brochure. He had it in his pocket about Madison College, and I
Hmm.
applied. And I know Andy referenced this wonderful priest, Father Augustine Cunningham, our
Hmm.
guidance counselor, who who had an impossible job. All guidance counselors have an impossible job. They get 15 minutes off without any pressure sometime in mid-October, and then the rest of the time it's 100 miles an hour. And imagine if you lost transcripts or something, or didn't mail something in and
Right.
ruined a guy's life, or at least
Yeah.
his first year out of high school.
Yeah.
When I put in for Madison on January 3rd, and much to the probably anger of most people applying to Madison these days, I was in by January 23rd.
Hmm.
I didn't have great grades. You had better grades than I did, and a lot of
I
people did.
don't think so.
Well, I was 33rd out of 107, and I think yeah, that's right. I was 33rd. Had an 89% average, and over time, over those 2 months, you get into tech like in April. So when I got
Hmm.
into tech, I was like, all right. And then you will remember we went to Roanoke Catholic game
Hmm. Yeah.
and on a road trip.
I do remember
I'm not going there. I'm not going there.
That's
I'm
why I
not
gave
going
him
there.
oh,
This is
please.
one of the secrets that I'm keeping. But I'm sorry. And um, and we went and visited tech.
Yeah.
And it was dreary. It would snow 12 inches. We stayed with your brother. On his, about 8 of us slept on his, well, there were 7 of us there. We slept on his floor, and with Rick Stokes was his roommate. And I wasn't doing backflips over it. And I would sit down. I probably sat down with Father Augustine a total of 5 times,
Yeah.
and he said, "I'd love to see you at Madison." And when I told people I was going to Madison College instead of Virginia Tech that I got into, people called the police. I mean, they couldn't believe I was choosing a little teacher's college. But Pete, I'm not saying, and to everybody, this is not Madison's better than Tech. Please don't hear that. Madison afforded me an opportunity. It was only 7,200 people there when I got in. Now it's 24,000 in a whole new campus. You probably haven't seen it, but they
Mhm.
built on the other side of 81, double the size of the campus. And it was just, my sophomore year, I started getting involved with everything. I won't bore you. And my day was chock full of stuff. And frankly, I wasn't going to study anyway. It was either playing backgammon or spades or playing pickup basketball or pickup soccer. And once I got involved with everything, I met a million people. I learned a lot about love, life, and laughter. I learned I learned life skills, and I had a phenomenal experience in Madison. I was able to stay on campus all 4 years in the dorm on a meal contract, which was problematic when I first got my first teaching job. I had to cook for myself, but I adored my time at Madison. I absolutely loved
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
Period.
I had forgotten about the route through Virginia Tech. Now that you say that, now I remember. I remember. My brother, because we were talking the other day, because he came in like junior year, and so he was like I think a year behind Steve Bannon, and so
Yeah.
my brother liked to write. He was the exact opposite. Writing wasn't my forte, or did I care to do any writing. But when Bannon Steve was like editor of the Hokie newspaper, Steve would write an article or two. So they had some engagement, and we were kidding about just what Steve's doing now and, how it tied into Virginia Tech. So that was kind of cool. So what do you say? What's one thing about your life today that your 18-year-old self would be surprised?
Um, well, that I know one thing I would not be surprised, and all the way to the end of my career, I would, except for my last gig, which was in a governor's school where there weren't behavior problems, but I would be in schools and kids would be transferred into my class because they just couldn't get along with, the Michael Jarrett of their world, um, and I got along well with them, and they did really well. And we'd be in the faculty meeting, and they'd say, "What in the world? How does it that he got thrown out of three other people's classes, and you're getting good work out of him?" And I'd say, "Because he's me." It was always a he. Well, it wasn't always a he, but
Yeah.
for the most part. And those kids usually, and I'm kind of not being humble here, but if you're smarter than the average bear, maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but I got things the first time through. I didn't need to have it repeated, and so I'd
Mhm.
misbehave. So you get those people involved, and I learned that you make them subject matter experts, and I want you to I want you to come in and do a 4-minute report on the Jonestown flood of 1900 in Jonestown,
Mhm.
Pennsylvania. I'm just grabbing something, and it lifts them up a little bit, and they get to do. Usually kids that misbehave are probably pretty good speakers, and they like doing stuff like that, and we all kids like us are um, approval seekers, and we're showmen. We want other people to laugh at our jokes and like us and all that, and so it was just a secret I had that came out of Benedictine, and before that St. Paul's, that you know. But to answer your question, which I hope I remember, um, I'm surprised that for all the trouble I got into in high school, and I'm admitting to it, I almost got thrown out of Benedictine 3 or 4 times. Went before the disciplinary board in our freshman year, and that was scary. Um, that I had basically as successful a teaching career as I did. I did not teach my entire. It was from '79 to I retired teaching in '14 and coaching in '16. But I um, I didn't know that I was going to get along that well in the education environment.
Mhm.
But my wife once said to somebody at a dinner party that I jumped out of bed in the morning. I'm gonna, today we're gonna do the War of 1812 or something, they and I didn't even know that. I believed her, but I didn't know it. So I would say, staying in education. I wrote in between. I actually started a soccer magazine in those 8 or 9 years without teaching, and that enhanced my what became a big passion of mine of writing.
Mhm.
And I sent you some of my links of stuff I've written, and
Yeah,
I was
we have to
actually
have you back on to talk about the books.
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
We're gonna have to have you back
Oh,
on to talk about the books,
okay. Yeah. All
okay?
right. Yeah.
Because we do a lot with book authors and just, but here I wanna just make sure we can get the most out of Dave Hillgrove
Bring
that
it on.
can can help our fellow classmates reconnect. So
Yeah.
this is a grandkid question. So 10 grandkids, when you're raising the girls, tell our viewers like what's the difference in the way you show up when you showed up for your girls versus now showing up for your grandkids?
Well, I am second banana to the greatest nana in the world, with all apologies to other grandmothers, but Dorothy is amazing. Dorothy was always a breadwinner in our family. She got a job just before we got married, or just after we started dating that year before we got married. She got a job with AT&T, and then we could have moved to Dallas or New Jersey or other places. Atlanta was offered, and she could have moved up the food chain and probably made even more money. But one time, one time my wife sold to a huge contract to Estes Trucking, which had 236 places, offices. And she put a T1 in every one of those, and her bonus was more than my annual salary.
Wow.
That was a one-time thing, but
Yeah.
that's the difference. And so I had the summers off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, I'm a girl dad. I'm a proud girl dad. I've seen every chick flick that came out between certain years. I don't watch them too much anymore, but and I loved them. And I had a great mom who lived as a widow for 30 years.
Yep.
Died in 2011, but she never got to meet my sons-in-law or any of our grandchildren. Our oldest grandchildren are 7.
Mm-hmm.
But they, we went to Kings Dominion. We went to the park. They were all in swim. They were all very good swimmers. And so their swim team was a big part at the beginning of the summer. And then, and I will tell you without question, as I close on this, that a stay-at-home dad is the hardest job on the planet. A high school principal is the second hardest, and I don't apologize to anyone for those two things, but when you have to deal with the moods of young children, and something just popped up on my screen, let me kill it. All right, it was from you. When you're dealing with the moods and the attitudes and any of that for your own children, and you are, you're balancing time. You got to keep the house clean. You got to do laundry, and you got to have dinner ready. And I failed on all of those regularly, but it's very hard. Mm-hmm. And you want time for yourself, guys especially. Women are nurturing by nature, but and I grew that. If it's a skill set or an art form, I don't know, but I grew that during those years, with them. And Dorothy always went off to work and then came home and then did great things as a mom. But now as a grandmother, oh my God, she's taught all our kids how to read an analog clock and the numbers and letters and coloring. And I mean, she's amazing. And when they blow up, as all kids do, she just takes them both by the hands and says, look at me, look at my eyes. And then, we can get through this. And it just, the panic level goes, ooh.
Bring down the temperature.
I don't have that skill set as a grandfather, because I'm a grandfather. My bones hurt. I'm full of muscle rolling over in bed. And why can't you work with me better than this? But she's selfless.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
It's a special time that we have. So
I didn't have any grandparents.
Oh, really? Okay.
Dorothy lost her mother when she was 2 years old.
Wow.
Her grandparents and her very eclectic father raised her. And, and her sister, who Catherine, is a year older, and they're actually the same age for about 45 days a year. And so she knew the power of a grandparent, which is something I never had. I'm very, very, very blessed.
Hmm. Yeah, I was telling, I forget who it was, but I go each month, each 3-week cycle, I would go out with my 3 oldest individually. So the 5-year-old, is 5, and we go to dinner, we go to lunch, we go to a place, we go to a couple places, and we were at Starbucks, and she's drinking her Frappuccino, and out of the blue, she goes, "Best day ever." and says it. And I tell you, my heart and everything was losing it because 5 years old, you hear something so innocent that really
And true.
present at and because you're not as busy as you were when you're raising, you're more present, you're listening, you're engaging. It's a totally different kind of connection. But to have a 5-year-old say that, I mean, I it took me everything I could from just losing it right there on the spot.
Oh, you're a crier. I know that. So am I.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
I think
I
it's
my fair share. So what path? Okay. No, we asked that. Okay. Someone. Okay. Here's one.
let
What?
me do this. Let me do this real quick. As grandparents, we can see the end game.
Yeah.
When my children were 5 years old, I I didn't know what middle school was going to look like. I didn't know what high school was going to look like.
Yeah.
College, and now motherhood. Now nothing's an emergency anymore.
Yeah.
Everything's a small matter. I mean, we're going to get through this. It's not a big deal. Just relax and stay close to God, and you're going to get through this. But
Totally.
that's the joy of grandparenting, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think you're right. The pace, just the being that present with them to listen to the innocence of that age is beautiful. What what kept you grounded or brought joy over the years?
My mother instilled in me and my brother a faith in God.
Hmm.
I couldn't put a finger on how she did it except by example. But my whole life, I have been one of the many people from our class who have managed life with a higher power and control. Now, I take back the, the bus, driving seat too often, far too often. But if you realize there is a God and it ain't me, you got a better chance at a little bit of everything, including love, life, and laughter. I've said that before, and so that kept me grounded. I love my job. I love my family, and I'm not afraid to wear my heart on my sleeve. So sometimes that brings me closer to people, and sometimes that drives people away. But I'm me, and I'm not really gonna try to change things. Not at this age. I mean, but I do try to hold thy tongue sometimes. Sometimes.
Hey, okay. What would you say? Because we always know, like you said, you have about 700 former kids, and so you have that connection.
Facebook, because of Facebook.
Yeah, on Facebook.
I feel sorry for people that, the Peace Corps generation that came
Yeah,
on in the mid 60s and the 70s. And I taught with all those people and they retired far before me. But I feel sorry that they didn't have what I have had with social media. But
yeah.
very quickly, I had an encounter with the Bishop J. O'Connell lacrosse team recently. Um, Too long to get into, and so I shared a story with somebody that we had the last couple of nights we were at Sandbridge. We were down there all winter, and this guy was still had his finger on the pulse of coaching and teaching, and he works at a high school down in Norfolk and Virginia Beach, and he said, nowadays those girls would show up at that O'Connell, time on the beach, and they would get each other's telephone numbers, and then they would go to, and I wish I could tell you what he told me, that I can't remember the social media. The only thing I'm on is Facebook. I don't do Instagram or anything. And he said that, they'll convert to this over to text, picture, text, and that's where they're comfortable. And that's a sad commentary that anthropologists are going to look back on in 200 years and wonder, so this is where the country went south.
Yeah, there's. I just did a podcast on it. The four human drivers: aliveness, connection is number two, and the connection. I make phone calls every afternoon because I get up real early. When I start to energy starts to go, focus, whatever, I just get on the phone and call people. And I always did it with my girls. If they would text me, I just pick up the phone, call them, because you get the emotion in a conversation that
That
you
you
don't.
don't get in a text, right?
And obviously they get misunderstood. I didn't mean that. Well, that's what I read, you know.
Right.
And so that's how I received it. But my question, is with being a teacher, was there somebody in your high school years that, really poured into you, stood out, that really helped you, that you can share with our viewers?
Sure. I would say, I don't think your viewers know what Benedictine High School was like. It was an all boys Catholic military high school. And when you put all boys together, there's a dynamic that is indescribable to people that went to public schools. And our faculty and cadre and priesthood, they were fear-based in their motivation. And honestly, I went in the exact opposite direction with that. I never, well, I did as a younger man, but I got so far away from that and chose other motivational techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Our fear-based faculty, they got us to perform, or at least to behave, because you get hit with a wiffle ball bat, maybe, or drummed on the head with a college ring, which nowadays Mike Jarrett would be taken out in handcuffs.
Yeah.
He knocked Jamie Karn out. Jamie was out for about 15 seconds because he hit him on the top of the head with his ring. There were other forms of physical punishment, and
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to that. I never did it, but nothing will keep you in line more than the fear of physical punishment.
Sure.
Even if it's crabbing or running laps or going at Saturday for penalty detail because you got 5 demerits or you had to march them off in the afternoon. To answer your question, I apologize for the roundabout. I mentioned Father Augustine. Buster Lammy had a huge impact on my life. He told me a life story one time where I'm not going to say his name, but there was a guy a year ahead of us who came looking for me every day. And we went to St. Paul's together, and you and I were classmates with his younger brother. Mm-hmm. And he marked me 3 out of 5 days for a while. And I brought it up one time to Buster. And it was one of the rare moments when Buster would go off topic and talk about life. Yeah. And he said, if I were you, Hillgrove, I would shine my shoes and polish my brass and have my hair cut, and I would dare him to find something wrong with me. I would go after him by adhering to his behavioral standards. And my life changed a little bit that day. I don't know if I ever put it into play until later, but he was right. He was absolutely right.
Yeah.
Joe Farley had a big impact on my life because he was a gentle man who cared about us deeply and put up with our antics and occasionally got angry. But I'm still in touch with Joe. He's recently widowed, and I love him. Don Storino had a huge impact on my creativity, and he had us start a book when we were sophomores in high school. I still remember. I don't have a copy of it, but I still remember what I wrote about. Yeah. And had us write a lot. And writing samples, to be corrected, take hours. Towards the end of my career, I was teaching really, really intelligent kids, which my strength was teaching we call it street smart government or street smart history. But in my later career, it was much more, I had much smarter kids, and I I think I lost my train of thought. I think that train has left the station, but um, that to be taught how to think, to be taught how to
Yeah.
be creative, to be
Yeah.
taught beyond the if you don't do this, this is going to happen to you.
Yeah.
I know what I was going to say, and I'll say it quickly. I would have between 75 and 85 essays to read every weekend. Each
Mm.
essay took a minimum of 10 minutes. The math on that is 11 or 12 hours of weekend work if I had the papers ready on Monday. And if
Right.
I didn't have them ready for Monday, chances were I wasn't going to get them done during the week. I mean, I needed to because they put a gun to your head. Of, where's my papers? It was 16 weeks ago we gave them to you. But
Yeah.
teaching writing takes a tremendous amount of
Yeah.
time. And Sereno did that, and Joe did it to a good degree. There were other people. I'd forget somebody if I started naming them all, but they're kind of near the top.
Well, I have a hard close, but I wanted to ask you this. What would be the one thing that you would want our viewers to take home from our time on the podcast?
Go with God is probably at the top. I think the creation and invention of the internet and social media is an extension of it, and it's going to get worse. AI is going to make it worse. That is getting away from one of your tenets of good life connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think very strongly that you need to find. I think everybody needs to have a good, clean joke. I think everybody needs to have a good blessing before a meal. If you're called to a dinner party, and Dave would just say the blessing, you got to have one. You don't want to be you can kind of shoot from the hip, but kind of have one you got to go to. You got to be willing to share a little bit about yourself. You got to take risks. It's worth it to take risks with your friendships, with your self-disclosures, with your philosophy, and for God's sake, we're living in a world that, and we're living in a country where political damage is done between the polarized sides of our. I mean, there's no middle ground in our country these days. It's appalling, and people lose friends over things that are said and things that are written and posted, and there's no sense in that. We're all supposed to be in this together. We're 4 generations removed, 3 generations removed from war. Our parents, your parents and mine, had World War II.
Yeah.
We would not get through the home front in 2025 if we had to do what was called upon people in this country from 41 to 45, and then subsequent devaluation of the economy and everything else. But we need to pull together, and I'd hate to think that it's going to cause something from the outside. Maybe the safest example would be if an extraterrestrial planet started attacking us and this world had to pull together. We might become a better generation for our great-great-grandchildren. I'm babbling. This is a prate.
Dave, it's been a treat. I want to have you back on to discuss your books and talk more in depth about that. But I have a hard close, so thank you so much for spending time with us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Pete. I really appreciate our friendship and what you're doing for our class. This is going to be great.
Looking forward to being up there and telling some old stories. And
all right, thanks. See
All
you
right.
soon.
Okay, sounds good. Appreciate you. Okay.